almost 2,000 miles away from home, and I get the chance to talk to a whole bunch of like-minded people who like startups, like innovation, and want to do big things in the world. I am absolutely humbled. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today. So thank you for the very kind introduction. I'm Ben Hogan, and I only get called Benjamin when I'm in trouble with my mom. It's okay. You can call me whatever you want. And I'm really excited to be able to talk a little bit about the ecosystem that we're working on building around the University of Notre Dame, and how to involve investors in that process. So if you have an established innovation ecosystem with your university, a lot of what I'm going to talk about today will probably feel like something you know really well and may be obvious. But if you're like our university and you're working on building an innovation ecosystem, especially an innovation ecosystem from scratch, then hopefully some of what I will say will be able to guide you and be helpful. So what do I know about building an innovation ecosystem? I've been absolutely privileged to be able to be on a team and now lead a team that has created about 60 startups over the last 6.5, 7 years, something like that. So those are startups that have funding and a team. A lot of them have deep technology around them, and about 50 of those startups are still around. So if you're looking at, you know, kind of the metrics that everybody knows about startup failure rates, we have about 90% that are succeeding instead of 90% that are failing. So I've gotten to do startups in all kinds of different industries and verticals. I've gotten to do startups around therapeutics, diagnostics, medical devices, government technology, consumer goods, and right now, I'm getting to work on my first quantum computing startup, building a new type of quantum computer that's smaller and more scalable. So what my team has done is looked at kind of the process of innovation, or our process of innovation, and tried to create a very staged and specific process on how do you implement the scientific method on business hypotheses, and then decide what startups to build and how to do it. So we have this process, and from a very high level, it looks like what we call risk assessment, which is a market research report. And then from there, we do what we like to refer to as de-risking. So we have kind of two types of de-risking that we do. We have technical de-risking. So what can we do on the technology to move it forward, to kind of prove that it's going to work? And then on the other side, we have customer de-risking, or market de-risking. And so most of the faculty members at the university have never talked to a customer and don't think about customers when they're doing their research. And so that team has done about 10,000 customer interviews over the last 6 or 7 years. And then finally, we have what we call enterprise acceleration, but it's really more like launch. And we end up building the startups ourselves in a lot of times. So we have no established startup ecosystem. So when you're talking about universities, a lot of times you need to answer the question, why innovation? Why do I care as a university about innovation? I'm here to educate. And I want to introduce you to this guy. His name's Father Soren. He's got a really amazing beard I'm very jealous of. I could never grow a beard like that. My wife would kill me. He has a quote that we like to talk about all the time at the university. This college cannot fail to succeed. It will be one of the most powerful means for good. And we think about that, and we build it into everything that we do. And so when we're talking about innovation, we're thinking about how can we be a means for good in the world. And so Notre Dame has all of this research that we're doing, but most of the time it stays in the lab. So what can we do with this research that can make an impact on society and make our world a better place to live in and be in? Most of the time it ends up staying in the lab though. Maybe we get some papers, we get some talks, and the university faculty and the university at large, we get to kind of pat ourselves in the back and say, good job, we did some research, we pushed the bounds of human understanding. But so what? What did we do with it? A really fantastic example of this is I have in one of our labs a professor that has developed a once-a-month injection that essentially cures peanut allergies, and it sits in the lab, and I can't get it out of the lab. And so anybody that has a young child with peanut allergies knows that if you just had one injection a month and you didn't have to worry about it, that would literally change your life. And so when we think as a university about why innovation, why do we care, what is the impact, we're really thinking about solving problems that have never been solved before. A lot of times when we talk about innovation, it's, what can we bring to the market? What value can we drive to the customer? But we're more interested in what problems can we solve that have never been solved before, and what can we let humanity do that it's never been able to do before. So just a kind of a quick background on what it's looked like to build an innovation ecosystem for us. There's a picture of South Bend from the 1950s. For anybody that doesn't know, South Bend is where the university is. It's a town of about 120,000 people. It's very small. It's about 2 hours away from Chicago. And so everybody knows where Chicago is. Nobody knows where South Bend, Indiana is. But in the 1950s, South Bend was a beautiful town. It was very wealthy, and it was built around the company Studebaker. So that was an automobile manufacturer. But then in 1963, the plant shut down in South Bend, and in 1966 they went out of business completely. And so this is a picture taken not too long ago, I think it was like last year, and this is just outside of South Bend. It's one of the many factories that have shut down. This building still looks like that. My wife loves to play ice hockey, and we see this building every time we go down to the ice rink. So South Bend has really struggled. After Studebaker shut down and the plant left, we lost about 50% of our population. And when you lose 50% of a population, you end up with things like this. So the university kind of buried in on itself and said, we're not going to worry about South Bend. You all need to figure yourselves out, and we're just going to keep being this amazing, wealthy university. And even worse than that, the only big industry that we've got in our area is building RVs, recreational vehicles. Those look really fancy, but they're basically just plywood and sheet metal, and they've been made the same way since about the 1970s, no real innovation, and they're made by low-skilled workers. It's one of the highest income disparity counties in the country. So South Bend is a very prototypical Rust Belt city. It's kind of what's left over when you get manufacturing moving overseas. And so even still up until about 2016, 2017, our economy was shrinking and we were losing businesses. So you can see there's about 2,000 fewer businesses from 1997 to 2016. And Notre Dame has a very big name, but it hasn't always been a very powerful research institution. Notre Dame is historically an undergraduate research institution, and it's only since about the 1990s that we decided that we were going to start doing a lot of research. So in the 90s, we were about $5 million of research, and now we're at about $200 million of research. So that's incredible, that's wonderful, but what do we do with all of this amazing research that we're doing? Coupled with that, the kind of model of technology transfer that has been used up until now has been a failure. So this is the Brookings Institute. What it usually looks like in the United States is you have an office called the Tech Transfer Office, and it's usually 4 or 5 50-year-old white guys trying to convince GE or IBM to take a license to some patent. It doesn't work very well, and it hasn't worked for a long time, unless you're talking about therapeutics or seeds. I didn't know that until recently. So in 2017, the university decided that they were going to take a big bet on innovation, on entrepreneurship, and we created the Idea Center. So we took everything on campus related to innovation and entrepreneurship, put it into this building here, which we call Innovation Park. It sounds amazing. And we said, all right, we're going to do something different with tech transfer, and we're going to focus on building startups so that our university, our research, can have a better impact in the world. So that was kind of our starting point. And I told you at the beginning, we've created about 60 companies, 60 funded companies. We've created more than that, but they weren't really amazing companies, so we focus on that kind of 60 number. And so what does that look like now? What did we do? What did we learn about involving investors? Because getting 60 companies funded is a lot of funding. It's many millions of dollars. And so how did we bring investors along on that ride with us? So first, I want to address the universities ourselves. We've always got some work to do before investors are going to be willing to work with us. So one of the things that we preach, one of the things that we focus on so much when we're building our startups, when we're training entrepreneurs, and when we're inviting investors is our own values and mentality. So we're trying to be hungry, we are trying to be humble, and we're trying to be helpful. And so we want to make ourselves the type of people, the type of organization that investors would want to work with. You also need to remember that investors are people, and so you need to understand the motivations of why they want to work with you in the first place. So generally there's two, though I'm going to say three, and for the investors in the room, close your ears on the third one. Number one is investors are driven by return on investment. So you need to be able to show them that them working with you is going to give them a return on their investment. The other one is most investors that you'll end up working with as a university are probably alumni of your university. At least that's true for us. And so a lot of times the reason that they're working with you is for the memories that they had when they were in school. They had really wonderful experiences and they want to give back. And so you need to be able to invite them to have that same experience, provide that same experience for other people. And the third one is ego, but we're not going to talk about that one. You also need to put together a bold vision. So what happens when investors work with you? Because if you invite them to come and work with you and it's just, hey, come and help us out, and it's going to be great, you're going to make some memories for people, that's not going to work. You need to show them what happens when the investors work with the university. And so this is our bold vision, is we're trying to create 250, we call them high potential startups. This is companies that are funded, have a good board of advisors and mentors and things like that. They've got kind of a minimum amount of funding. They've got people that are full-time in it. And the core of these companies need to be derived from research, and so that we can build 3 unicorns and have one of them stay in South Bend. There's a lot of interesting research about what happens when you create a unicorn and the number of companies that it spins off of itself. And so we talk a lot about this kind of strategic flywheel, all focused on impact. So Notre Dame wants to be a force for good in the world, which means that we need to be measuring not just the dollars that our companies are making, but the impact that they're having. And so when we're talking to investors, we're showing them, hey, if you come and work with us and help us build companies, we're going to be able to recruit better faculty and better students. We're going to be able to help those faculty and those students do more interesting, more technical, and more commercialization-focused research. We're going to be able to make it so that the research that comes out is less risky. We're going to be able to engage investors and alumni to launch successful startups. When those startups are successful, people are going to make a bunch of money, and you're going to have a big impact in the world, and some of that's going to come back to the university. And then you're going to be able to have the university focus again on innovation and impact, and the flywheel keeps going around and around, and we're starting to see some of this. So a couple of things not to do. Investors are not ATMs. If your expectation is that you're going to have this company or this cool technology and then just say, all right, investors, come on, get out your checkbooks, it's time, you're going to get a lot of pushback. We have kind of a saying that we focus on a lot: ask for ideas, ask for advice, and you get money. Ask for money, and you get nothing. And so when we're talking to all of our entrepreneurs, or even when I am having conversations with investors that I want to invest in the companies, I ask them for advice and feedback. Don't expect them to do your job for you either. Your job as a university is to remove a lot of the risk from a company or technology so that it's not as big of a bet for the investor. And so if you expect the investor to come in and do that work to mitigate the risk, to de-risk the company for you, you're going to find a lot of pushback and frustration. So a few places that you can start to involve investors. And each one of these, I've got just a couple of companies or stories that I've found success with. Investors are really fantastic mentors, right? Especially alumni investors. They've been there before. A lot of those investors have started successful companies or invested in a lot of successful companies, and so they know what not to do. They also remember when it was their turn and all of the mistakes they made. And so they're much more likely to be able to guide your entrepreneurs in ways that they never would have been able to see themselves. I've got two companies here. Desi is a student company. It's two juniors in college right now, so they're still in college. We got them connected to an investor who is their mentor. He meets with them for an hour a week. He emails them or does Slack messages multiple times a day and is now invested in their company. These kids are still in college, and this investor, this mentor, invested in their company and convinced other investors to come in. And so now they have $300,000 invested in their company when they're in college. When I was a junior in college, when I was, 21 years old, I was an idiot. And I would not have known what to do with $300,000. That would have been a terrible idea. But because they've got this really sophisticated, mission-driven mentor, they're able to be really effective with that. And I'm very, very impressed with them. You can also put investors on the board of your companies. So Sleep Easy is a company that was a student company. Think a pillow that spits out oxygen so that you don't have to wear a nasal cannula at night. Anybody who's ever had oxygen, the thing that goes up your nose? Instead, you can just lay your head on the pillow. We put a really fantastic entrepreneur in the sleep space, the oxygen space, on the board of this company. And he was able to guide the entrepreneur through the FDA approval process in about a year and a half, and with $500,000. And for anybody that has worked with the FDA, $500,000 is about 10 to 100 times less than what you usually have to spend to get approvals. Investors are also advisors. So we have what we call our Venture Builder Committee, which is successful entrepreneurs, successful investors that are the first people that I can go to when I have a question, when I don't know what to do with a company, when I feel stuck, when I don't know how to work with an entrepreneur, when I don't know what the business model needs to look like for, a quantum computing company. And so investors can also help guide you not only in how to do your role, how to do your job at the university better, but also they'll let you know what gets them engaged and excited. Investors are really fantastic decision makers as well. They can be fantastic partners in things like seed fund investment committees. Most universities have some funds set aside that they can seed projects, and this is a really great example. I met with the Office of Research from Case Western. They created this seed fund. They have 2 investors that are on the committee, and the way that they've got it set up is that you need to have a researcher, a PI, combined with a company that then you're working on a project. Finally, investors can be really good influencers for your university strategy in general, right? We're going to do our influencer dance. We just put together the university strategic framework that's going to guide us for the next 10 years, and the Board of Trustees is what put that together. The Board of Trustees is about 60% investors, right? So you can bet, you can believe that our framework for the next 10 years is a lot more focused on innovation, entrepreneurship, and commercialization. But the number one thing that you need to remember when you're working with investors is that you need to treat them as partners. And if you treat them as partners, both of you will be able to get out of the relationship what you need. Thanks so much for letting me come today, and I'm looking forward to meeting more of you as we go along.